Hey everyone, tomorrow is a pivotal moment in our nation's history. At 10 a.m. Eastern Time, RFK will sit in front of the Senate Finance Committee for his confirmation hearing to be our nation's next Secretary of Health and Human Services. I urge everyone to call their U.S. senators over the following days and demand they vote yes on Bobby's nomination. He is more than qualified. He's proven, principled, and prepared to lead. I also want to say to Senators Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Bill Cassidy, Tom Tillis, James Lankford, Cory Booker, John Fetterman, Bernie Sanders, and Catherine Cortez Masto, this is a bipartisan message, and it comes directly from me. While Bobby may be willing to play nice, I won't. If you vote against him, I will personally fund challengers to primary you in your next election, and I will enlist hundreds of thousands to join me. Big Pharma and Big Ag have exploited us for far too long. It ends now. You're either on the side of transparency and accountability, or you are standing in the way. The choice is yours. Please choose wisely.
The next day.
Now you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with leadership.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. I will. I want good science, and I want to protect.
But you will not tell the organization you founded not to continue selling that product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about RFK's confirmation hearing. Probably the most highly anticipated confirmation hearing, as he has been nominated to be the Health and Human Service Secretary by President Trump. And one of the reasons why this nomination is so controversial is because the mainstream liberal media and the Democrats have spent years smearing RFK as a conspiracy theorist.
Thousands of pages of statements, books, and podcast transcripts in a review of his record. The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power. This is the profile of someone who chases money and influence wherever they lead, even if that may mean the tragic deaths.
However, I do not believe that RFK is a conspiracy theorist. I believe he is a reasonable Democrat who wants to make this country healthy again. Okay, the obesity rate in this country is out of control. Okay, almost half the country's obese. About 74% of the population is overweight, and that has led to an outbreak of chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, cancer. All of these things, I mean, they really just go back to obesity for the most part, and this has to be addressed. It's a huge problem that has to be addressed. The food that we're eating is definitely not helping us, okay? And that is what RFK is trying to help solve as the Health and Human Services Secretary. This is something that should be bipartisan, right? It's something that we should all be able to get behind as a society and say, hey, you know what? We need to make this country healthier, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that improves the quality of life for everybody. It brings down the cost of healthcare. $200 billion is spent per year in healthcare costs directly related to obesity in this country, right? It is putting a strain on our social safety nets, and it's time that we address this issue.
We're having epidemics of all these chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, allergic diseases. obesity. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans were obese. Today, 74% of Americans are obese or overweight. No other country has anything like this. In Japan, the obesity rate is still 3%. And epidemics are not caused by genes. Genes may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. Something is poisoning the American people. And we know that the primary culprits are changing food supply, the switch to highly chemical intensive processed foods. We have 10,000 ingredients in our country, in our foods. The Europeans have only 400. If you buy a McDonald's French fries in our country, there's 11 ingredients, my understanding. In Europe, there's only 3. If you buy Fruit Loops in our country, they're loaded with food dyes, with yellow dye, red dye, blue dye, and many other ingredients. The same company makes the same product with different ingredients for Canada and Europe. And at age, we don't have good science on all these things. And that is deliberate. That's a deliberate choice not to study the things that are truly making us sick, that are not only contributing to chronic disease, but to mortalities from infectious disease. We need to get a handle on this, because if we don't, it's an existential threat. Our country is not going to be destroyed because we get the marginal tax rate wrong, or because we get one of these culture war issues that we've been talking about today wrong. It's going to be destroyed if we continue down this trajectory of chronic disease. We need to fix our food supply, and that's the number one.
And going back to the big picture here, 60% of Americans have a chronic disease. Mr. Kennedy, I believe for such a time as this that you're not just one of 300 million people. I think that you are the person to lead HHS to make America healthy again, that God has a divine purpose for you, and I look forward to your confirmation and working with you to make America healthy again.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, in a sane world, you wouldn't have any opposition to that mission statement, right, that RFK put out there. Because, in my opinion, he's tackling the real issues that we have to deal with when it comes to healthcare, the cost of healthcare, and the health of this country. But see, progressives, they have no real solutions outside of just demanding that, hey, the government just needs to pay for everybody's healthcare. Who gives a damn about the individual behaviors of the individual, or what's in the food, or if the environment is making people sicker and stuff like that? Who cares about that, right? The government just needs to pay for it no matter what.
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Healthcare a human right? Is healthcare a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
Yeah.
I would say it's different, because with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. Well, and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry. I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right. Every other country on earth says healthcare, whether you're poor or rich, young or old, is a human right. I'm not hearing you say that. All right. You've talked about the drug companies, and maybe we agree.
No, healthcare is not a human right, right? Healthcare is not a human right. These people do not understand what a right is, okay? They think that anything that they agree with is a right, right? We have to have it. The government has to give it to us. And it's like, no. That's not how things work, okay? Notice how these progressives, when you're talking about the universal healthcare conversation, how they always point to what every other developed country on earth has universal healthcare and the government pays for it and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, again, you're missing the number one difference between the United States and all these other countries, which first and foremost, okay, we innovate a lot more than these other countries, right? One of the reasons why these countries are able to have universal health care is because they benefit from our innovations, okay, which comes from a capitalist system. But furthermore, our country is way more obese, way more unhealthy. We have way more chronic diseases. Our healthcare is the most expensive in the world. And it's not just because it's a capitalist system. It's quite literally because the demand for our healthcare services is far more than some of these other countries due to the fact that we have a more sickly society. So if you want to bring down the cost of healthcare, then you need to bring down the demand. Okay. If everybody weren't so sick, then hey, maybe healthcare will be affordable for everybody, right? Maybe we could have more socialized medicine if it wasn't so unaffordable. But the one thing I will give progressives is that I think they do have a point when it comes to the profit incentive of big pharma not necessarily being aligned with the health of the country, okay? Because I guess you could argue that part of the reason why we do have this obesity problem is due to the fact that you have an industry that essentially is a sick care industry and not a preventative care industry, right? Where you have these pharmaceutical companies making money off people getting sick. So they essentially support initiatives and campaigns that aren't necessarily better for keeping America healthy, because if America was a healthy country, they'd make less money. Okay. And you would think that progressives would understand this, that they would get on board with something like this, since they're supposed to be against profiteering industries like big pharma making money off of sickly Americans. Okay. And essentially contributing to the cause in order to make more money, okay, to increase their stock price, right? You would think they'd be against this. You think they'd be for trying to lower healthcare costs for everybody, but apparently not, right? Apparently, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, they're against RFK and what he's trying to do to lower the cost of healthcare for Americans, because Elizabeth Warren is essentially accusing RFK of trying to make money off of big pharma by banning vaccines, even though Elizabeth Warren almost got $1 million from big pharma doing her Senate campaign in 2020. Once again, we have Democrats projecting, right? The pot calling the kettle black. Even though I don't understand how is it that RFK is going to be making money off of a big pharma in his position, but this is the argument that Elizabeth Warren is making.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
No,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS, and I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits, so that what you do as Secretary will also benefit you financially down the line.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. The hypocrisy of these people knows no bounds, okay? Elizabeth Warren, who again is supposed to be one of these anti-big corporate America progressives, right? She is essentially arguing in favor of corporate America. She said, please don't sue Big Pharma, right? Don't abuse your power as the Health and Human Services Secretary to hold Big Pharma accountable and to make sure vaccines are safe, right? Don't do that. Please don't do that. While at the same time accusing him of trying to profit from his position, but yet she took almost $1 million in campaign donations from Big Pharma. Again, it's amazing how that works. These people, they are just not serious, right? They're not serious people, okay? It's almost as if Elizabeth Warren forgot she was a progressive, right? She's supposed to be on the side of people like RFK. But that's what Trump derangement does to you. You throw away your ideology and your core beliefs and principles in order to oppose Trump. And that puts Democrats in some weird situations sometimes, right? Because they seem to be opposed to common sense in order to be opposed to Trump, which, again, is hilarious.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You have said
You're asking me,
repeatedly,
Senator,
those
you're asking me not to sue
requirements
pharmaceutical companies.
My
Yeah, you
point
are.
is stop
That's exactly what you're doing.
health. Look, no one should be fooled here. As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Oh my goodness, these people make me laugh. They pretend as if they're not making money off their position as politicians, okay? Elizabeth Warren is making money. Bernie Sanders is making, they're all making money, okay? Let's not pretend that these Democrats aren't getting rich in office, but she's concerned about somebody else making money. I don't think RFK needs to make money in office as the Health and Human Services Secretary, right? He has real skills. He's done real things. He has an actual career, unlike Elizabeth Warren, okay? So yeah, Elizabeth Warren was still fuming after this hearing with RFK. Take a look.
His answers are he intends to continue to make money off his anti-vax position. Look, he says he won't go to work for drug companies because the American people have a right to know that the decisions made while he is Secretary of HHS are only for the good of the American people. And yet, he wants to keep a piece of the action on every one of these anti-vax lawsuits. And what that means potentially is as Secretary of HHS, he can make those lawsuits a whole lot more profitable. In fact, he may have the opportunity to bankrupt the vaccine manufacturers, and then nobody gets vaccine.
Are you worried that he's in the position to serve his own interest?
That is the problem. He has said he will protect his right to make money off the position of Secretary of HHS. That means that every decision he makes could be for the American people or could be just to benefit RFK Jr.
Do you think any of the points you're making are resonating with your Republican colleagues? Can I get your name? Brennan, NBC.
Yeah, so you remember when the left, the progressives used to be against Big Pharma? Yeah, those were the glory days of the left, okay? When they actually stood for something. Now they don't stand for anything except being against Trump. And I think being against RFK is a bad move for Democrats because a lot of people supported Trump for that very reason, okay? RFK's coalition, they're basically like hippie Democrats and hippie Republicans, okay? And they've all come together and say, you know what? We want to make America healthy again. We don't like our food supply. We don't like all the toxic chemicals and the chronic diseases and all of the things that this country is going through from a health perspective. We want to fix that. And progressives are just like, nah, right? We're good, okay? We're against that because Trump is for it. We're against it. And again, I just don't think it's a good move. I think ultimately at the end of the day, this is going to backfire on the Democrats being opposed to RFK because a lot of people on the left actually support RFK. In fact, I think RFK has one of the highest approval ratings out of any like public political figure in the country.
This is the chance that RFK Jr. gets confirmed as HHS secretary. And you see, at this particular point, it's 74%. It's still high, but, you know, there's a 25% or 26% chance that he doesn't get confirmed. This is not a gimme. This is not a shoo-in. You know, this is not like Kristi Noem, right, when she got confirmed. These are not the same numbers. And I'll note more than that, right, this is down. This is down from a week ago when it was 82%, when it was more than a 4 and 5 chance. Now we're down to a roughly 3 and 4 chance. So, yeah, RFK Jr. is the favorite to become the next HHS secretary, but it's not a foregone conclusion. A lot of it will depend on what happens during these confirmation hearings here today.
And you do wonder if this also shows people starting to pay more attention.
I think so. I think people are starting to pay a little bit more attention. That honeymoon period that Trump had after, of course, he was sworn into the White House is kind of wearing a little bit down, and so maybe his picks get a little bit lower of a chance to, in fact, get confirmed.
You think that this HHS confirmation is a little more unpredictable than others. Why?
Why is it? Well, I went back through history and I was interested, different parties, the HHS secretary and the president, since Health and Human Services became a department, there were zero. There have been zero pre-RFK Jr. If RFK Jr. is in fact confirmed, he'd be the first to be a different party than the president who in fact nominated him. And why is that so interesting? Because the HHS secretary has some say over, abortion in this country, abortion policy in this country. And we know that the majority of Trump voters are against abortion. So that's going to be one of the interesting things to sort of focus in on, right? Does RFK Jr. in fact get all the Republicans? If he does, of course, he gets confirmed. But maybe his past views on abortion, how he answers those questions on how the Health and Human Services Department will deal with abortion, will in fact perhaps persuade some Republicans not to vote for him. And the last thing I'll sort of point out here, Kate, this is perhaps the reason why I don't necessarily think there are going to be that many Republicans who will go against him. Look at RFK's net favorability rating. Among Republicans, look at this now, plus 60 points. That is up from when he was running for the Democratic nomination 2 years ago when it was plus 17. Democrats hate RFK Jr. I'd be surprised if he gets any Democrats. But hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I personally think it's a mistake for Democrats to oppose RFK. I think it just shows that their partisanship does not lie in actual principles or values or anything like that. It just lies on hating Trump. And if they want to oppose him, okay, fine. But every Republican better vote for him, though. He better get approved by the Republicans. Because ultimately, this is what the base wants. This is what we voted for, right? The Maha Coalition happened because of RFK being a part of Trump's administration, and that is a promise that has to be kept, right? So again, I'm hoping that the Republicans are all on board, and Democrats are once again showing people that they are a party that exists solely to be in opposition to Trump. They don't stand for a damn thing themselves. And again, this is why they're spiraling. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.